All this, I think, in this lecture. I posted it this morning, and small chance, but we may even get started on the next lecture. Just as a reminder to everybody, a lot of you have been going to the lab sections. You know about Project 2, which deals with the relation manager. There's a layering that's going on in these projects that you may be seeing where RBFM is built on top of the PFM, and then the relation manager is built on top of that. So you see the notion of encapsulation and layers being built in on top of this. For example, in RM level, you have tuples, whereas in RBFM, you have records on top. And of course, at the RM level, you're taking advantage of catalogs as you've seen. So there are labs. I think this may be a notch too high. There are labs, of course, on Tuesday and Friday that will help you get through this, stay with the teams that you have, and you had your choice of going through either using our Project One solution or your own. Let's see, there is a note on forwarding addresses that was posted that would help you. I would also urge you to read the Project 2 report file so that you know what you have to report in the description that you submit together with the assignment. For example, one question that was posted yesterday or this morning has to do with the question of whether or not RIDs get reused. And of course, RIDs should be permanent, but when a record gets deleted, then it doesn't have any attachment anymore. So you want to use the RID again because you don't want to waste slots on your page. If there are questions about that, post follow-up things on that on Piazza, or ask me during an office hour, which I have today, or send an email, or whatever you prefer. There is a midterm coming up in, at this point, less than 2 weeks. The short 10-week terms always end up getting us. I have posted a previous midterm that you can take a look at, and I'll be posting the answers to that. You can bring in, again, no textbooks, no notes, except for, same as 180, one two-sided 8.5 by 11 paper with whatever you want written or printed on it that you can see yourself with no technical help, no microscopes or whatever. You can prepare the sheets together, but you can't share them during the exam, and you'll be handing in those sheets at the end of the exam with your names on them, and you'll also be showing your UCSC ID at the end of the exam. Emphasis, this lecture, as well as all the others, and the syllabus tells you what material we're going over, and if you're having some difficulty with the material, reading the textbook before or after the lecture could end up helping to some extent. So we're going to be talking about sorting, and in particular, we'll be talking about today sorting where the data may not entirely fit inside memory. So why do we want to bother with all this sorting stuff? Well, again, there are algorithms that we're going to be getting to soon that involve doing joins and doing aggregation where it may be sort-based, so these help. Although, frankly, for a lot of those algorithms, hashing can work just as well, in fact, better than sorting-based algorithms in some ways. If we go back to just a couple of lectures ago, when we talked about bulk loading of a B tree, the way that we bulk loaded was we sorted the data based on the field that we had as a search key in the B tree, and so sorting is important for that. You can also have a SQL query in which there's an order by specified. I'll ask a question right now. Are there any circumstances in which you have an order by, but you don't have to sort the data to be able to get the order by? The answer is yes. Can you think about why?
Key.
Go further. The word is right, but I need a sentence.
The key is already in order, so all you have to do is just get it.
If the order by is already handled by the way that you access the data. For example, if you access the data to get it based on an index, and therefore you got the data in the right order that you needed for the order by, then you're done. You don't have to sort it because your plan already produced the data in the order that you need for the order by, so why do something to sort it when it's already sorted? And so you do have to sort for an order by, except when your access plan, your execution plan already gave you the data in sorted order. In that case, you don't have to sort it because it already comes to you in sorted order. So the problem statement is, given a given number B of memory pages and a relation R of size N, which might not be the original relation, it might be a subset of the relation that you got using your where clause. So it doesn't have to be a stored relation, it can be whatever relation you have. And you have this relation R, where N is bigger, possibly quite a bit bigger than B. What you want to be able to do is to sort R based on your sort key. Okay, so this is what you want to order the data by. And you want to produce a relation R prime that is the same as R, except that it's sorted on the sort key. In other words, the sort problem is sorting the relation on the data, but you've got, on the sort key, but you have fewer pages than you have data. So we're going to stay with, believe it or not, these lectures were used before Twitter was quite as much in the news. Back before Twitter existed, but you have again this data of tweets where what you want to be able to sort the table based on the zip code. For example, what you might do is just take all the tweets that happened today, where the timestamp is today. T-stamp is the timestamp, where the timestamp is basically the date associated with timestamp. So you'd really write date of T-stamp, not just T-stamp, but where the date of T-stamp is today, because the timestamp has a lot more than just the date in it. And then you want to order it by zip, which is the zip code where it was posted. So you could be sorted where there's a lot of duplicates. I'll remind you, when you have an order by and there are duplicates, SQL doesn't tell you the order in which the values appear. So I don't mean that the data has duplicates in it, I mean that the order by has a lot of things with the same zip code, and SQL doesn't require any order. Things are correct in SQL in any order, except when SQL says order by, then you have to follow the order. So the goal of it is to, well, you want to be able to produce the right sort result. That's a good result. That's a good thing to achieve. And you also want to be able to make it work where the amount of memory may not be as big as the size of the file. If the file can synthesize memory, then you can take advantage of an in-memory file. There's a lot of stuff now where there's a huge amount of distribution that gets used to be able to do the sort. You use a lot of different memories on a lot of different nodes, but then you have to do things where you bring the things together and sort the entire file. So sorting just a subset of it is not going to work. There's a lot that can be done with MapReduce /Spark /Hadoop, which I will have a reference to sort of as a coda near the end of this lecture. And the question is, well, why not just use the operating system and use virtual memory? And you should know the answer to this already. You've got an algorithm where you know what the algorithm is going to be doing, and the operating system won't. And so whether you care about a page or you don't care about a page is something that you're well aware of when you're doing the algorithm. But the operating system, for example, may be taking advantage of LRU and getting rid of pages just because you need them. So virtual memory is not going to be, the best way of doing this, but you can do it, but it may not be using memory well. It may have more reads from your persistent storage, even if it's SSD, than you would need if you were more clever about it. You also want to sort efficiently based on time. So you want to minimize the number of IOs from disk or SSD or whatever your persistent storage is. You also want to take advantage of sequential read so that you can read a bunch of things sequentially and have good next, or read in a bunch of things together so that you can read in a bunch of blocks. So you can either have a large block or a bunch of blocks you read. You want to minimize the amount of CPU, and you want to be able to overlap the I/O with the CPU so that while you're doing computation, you can get the next stuff that you want ready for you. Frankly, you also want to take advantage of NUMA so that things are going to be right at the top level of what's going on. And when this book was written, and when variations of the slides were created, there's another criterion that gets used a lot now that wasn't mentioned, and which I briefly get mentioned at the end of this. There are various sort benchmarks that are out there that I will tell you about at the end. And there are things that involve time and cost and so on. There's also something called Joule sort, spelled Joule, where what you want to be able to do is, see what you can do with minimal energy usage. So energy counts too, and that's part of a goal in doing this as well. And again, we'll see a little bit about this at the end. But we're gonna start really simply, and a lot of you are gonna say, hey, I can do better than this as we get going. And yeah, these are gonna be straw horses that get knocked down very, very quickly. But we'll end up going through them just to see what's involved. So we're gonna start off with something which is a very simple algorithm. Again, it will get better. We'll do a two-way sort where we end up having 3 buffers, and we're gonna have a bunch of passes. And again, this is just to get the understanding going. It's not the best thing to use in practice, not even close to it. And basically, what we'll do is we're gonna operate in pass 0 with 1 page. So we'll read in a page's worth, which we'll also here identify with a block. We'll read in a page of data, and we'll sort it internally. We'll only have 1 buffer. We may have to use some additional memory, for variables and so on, depending on whether it's an in-place algorithm or not to sort in the memory. So now we've got a bunch of pages. We started off with, how many, there are n blocks in the file, and we're going to go ahead and sort each individual thing. So we'll have each of the n blocks sorted. And now what we're going to do is we're going to read in a pair of runs. What's a run? The result of the previous pass. It's going to be divide and conquer. We take the result of the previous pass, but we're only going to be using 3 pages. So what's the idea? We have the result of the previous pass. Well, let's just take the simple case. When we have 1 block, n different things, 1 block each sorted, we'll read in 2 results of the previous pass. That is 2 things that are 1 page long. And what we'll do is we'll output the merge of those 2 blocks. Well, how do we do that with just a total of 3 blocks in main memory, three buffer pages? Well, we've got 1 page for 1 input block, 1 page for a second input block. And what we'll do is, again, it's a kind of another different kind of traffic cop algorithm. We're going to take whoever is smallest in the values in the first block and in the second block, and we'll put things into the output block. But eventually the output block is going to get full. No problem, we'll just write the output block out to persistent storage. Then we'll have a free output block, and then again, we'll continue with whatever is left in input 1 and input 2. And so we'll output 2 blocks. So we'll basically, at the end of pass 1, we'll have n over 2 things, each of which is size 2. N over 2 things, each of which is size 2. Well, what do we do in the next phase? We'll read each of these 2-page things in, but we won't read the whole thing in. We'll read the first block of the first 2-page result from pass 1. We'll read the first block of the second thing. So we're going to be taking 2 2-page things and we'll be merging them into a 4-page thing. So read in the first page of each. And we'll do the same thing that we did before. We'll take what we do get and we'll produce an output block, and if the output gets full, we'll write it out, and then we'll have an empty output block, and we'll be able to keep merging. But you'll say, I don't have just 1 page in input 1 and 1 page in input 2. I've got 2 pages in each. Well, when I run out of room in input 1, because I've used everything up, I'll just read in the second block. So I only need 1 buffer for input 1, 1 buffer for input 2. When I run out of what's in input 2, I'll read in the second page. And you see, what I'll do is I'll take 2 pages and 2 pages, and with only 3 buffers, I'll produce a 4-page sorted output. Okay, so 1 by 1, I read the pages from my first input. 1 by 1, I will read the pages from my second input. I only read a page from my first input, a new page, when I've used everything inside my first input. And of course, when my output gets filled, I write it out so I have an output page. So I can do this with 3 pages. Get the idea on this? More generally. Pass 0, I write out something, if I assume n is 2 to the k, that's gonna make it nicer to be able to divide by 2 each time. And yes, I mean, it's possible n isn't exactly a power of 2, in which case there'll be some leftover stuff. You can see how this works, where you have to take ceilings and so on, but it's, and we'll write the formulas for that. But basically, just, map it to the next power of 2 if it's not exactly a power of 2, and there may just be some things that are empty. But what you're gonna do is you're gonna get n, which is 2 to the k, one-page run subfiles, and each one of them is sorted where you just do the in-memory sort of the individual pages. And now you do merges and merges and merges and merges. Again, this is the divide and conquer idea. Pass 1, you take these one-page pairs and just using 3 buffers, 3 buffer pages, I will merge them together. So I'll get things that are size 2. How many of them are there? Well, everybody's got to be someplace. It has to sort of multiply out to n, which is 2 to the k. So I'm going to have 2 to the k things that are 2-page runs. Next stage, what am I going to do? We went through this. Again, I'm going to be merging the 2-page pairs to produce 4-page pairs. So I'm going to get 2 to the k minus 2, that is 2 to the k divided by 4, 4-page runs. Everybody cool? Pretty straightforward. Past k minus 1, I'll be reading, again, you see what the pattern is. I'll be putting together things that are size 2 to the k minus 2, and I'll producing 2 things that are size 2 to the k minus 1. So the output of past k minus 1 is going to be a bunch of things of size 2 to the k minus 1, actually just 2 of them. And then in past k, I'll be taking the output of past k minus 1, merging those 2 to the k minus 1 pairs, and producing 1 2 to the k page pair. So that's all that's going on. And if it's not entirely obvious from that, it should be obvious from this picture. So here you have a case in which you have not everything full. You're going to have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 13 things in it. So it's not going to be quite 16. It's not going to be 2 to the 4th, but we're still going to have to go through, 4 passes basically to be able to get it done. Pass 0 through pass 3. Pass 0, I sort each individual page. In this case, we're just, because drawing gets kind of hard with more things in it, we're going to go ahead and we're going to have just 2 things in each page, but the same principle would apply if it didn't. So you see that the 3, 4 becomes, 3, 4. The 3, 4 became 3, 4. The 6, 2 became 2, 6. I mean, each of these is the same as what you have above. And if things aren't fully full, well, that's okay. The 2 just becomes a 2. This thing is empty. It stays empty. The black means it's empty. Not a big problem. And now what we're going to do is we're going to have merging of 2 2-page things to become a 4-page thing. So the 3, 4, 2, 6, we'll compare the 3 and the 2. The 2 is bigger, and the 2, then we compare the 3 and the 6. The 3 is bigger, compare the 4 and the 6. Well, we had to write out the 2, 3 because there was no room left in the output buffer. If the output buffer can only hold 2 things, now we have an output buffer in which we'll be able to put the 4 and then the 6, and so on. So that's the way this thing is going to end up operating. And here we're going to take the 2 things that have size 4 and produce something that has size 8. Over here, we'll just have something that has 5 things in it when we do the merge. And then we take the 8 and the 5 and we merge them together, and we get something which is going to be something where we have all 8 elements sorted, and they're going to be in, as it turns out, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 pages, because the empty stuff doesn't actually have to appear at the end. Should be easy. Each pass, we read and write every single page once. We read in the results of the previous pass, and we write out the new results. So how many pages do we have to write? We basically have to write n pages. A little bit less than that because, n might not be a power of 2, but, we really do have to write n pages in the file. It's exactly n, not actually 2 to the k. How many passes do we have to do? Well, you take log to the base 2 of n, and you take the ceiling of that, plus 1 more to be able to get the result, because pass 4 is what ends up producing the result. So you see the result for pass 3, and then you see we merge that together to get the result of pass 4. So log to the base 2 of 13 is a little bit less than 4. Ceiling that is 4. But then we don't forget about pass 0. So we're gonna have log to the base 2 of n passes plus the original pass to sort each individual page inside memory. So it's ceiling log to the base 2 of n plus 1. We assume n is 2 to the k, then it's k plus 1. So what's the total I/O cost? The number of pages that you have to read is going to be n. The number of pages that you're going to have to write in each pass is also n. Read and write each page once per pass, including in pass 0. So how many passes? Log to the base 2 of n plus 1 with the C1. How much work do you have to do to be able to read and write in each pass? 2 times n. So the total I/O cost is 2n log to the base 2 of n. It's a order n log n algorithm, but that's the precise value, assuming that things aren't staying in memory, that you have to read them in each time. That's the total cost. So sort the subfiles and merge, sort the subfiles and merge, and you've seen many divide and conquer algorithms, merge sort, quick sort, and so on. This is, again, a simple divide and conquer merge merge sort, and we're going to make this be better. Suppose that we have more than 3 buffer pages, and in practice, of course, we will have more than 3 buffer pages, and you've all been thinking about that. We're going to be going through several things that make this better. How do we go ahead and do them if we have B buffer pages, not just 3, where B can be more than 3? So basically what we're going to do is, what we'll do is we'll read in phase 0. Phase 0 is going to be an internal sort again. But we've got B buffer pages, so read in B pages of the file and sort them in memory. An in-place sort, or maybe a few extra pages that are there besides the buffer pages for variables to be able to make this work. So if we can sort B pages in memory, because we've got B buffer pages with an internal sort, then how many different sorted runs are there going to be? Well, we sort B, we sort B, we sort B, we sort B. The total number was n. There are going to be n divided by B sorted results as a result of phase 0. That's B times n divided by B equals n. And it has to be ceiling of n divided by B, because you need to be able to produce a result even if something's incomplete. So whatever B is, we sort B pages at a time, n divided by B, take the ceiling that run. And we're going to end up doing that, and we produce a something that creates, each sorted run has B pages in it. As we read in B pages, we wrote out B pages. And they're divided by B sorted runs. And now, what is pass 2 going to do? Well, pass 2 has to sacrifice 1 page for the output. So what we're going to do is we'll read in B minus 1 inputs from the previous pass. So phase 0 produced n divided by B runs of B pages each. We will read in a page at a time, B minus 1 of those. The first page only of each. So there were, again, n divided by B runs. We'll take B minus 1 of those runs, and we'll read in the first page of each, and we'll have an output page. And we're going to use the same trick that we used before. We will read in 1 page at a time for each of these B minus 1 inputs, and we'll create an output. And when the output becomes full, we'll write it out to persistent storage, because it's the first things that are the result of the merge. And then we'll create another output, and we'll write it out to persistent storage, so we just have 1 output buffer. And now what happens when we get through the first page of input 2, for example? We'll read in the second page of input 2. So we'll keep on doing this, and one by one, we're going to run out of pages in one of the input files. We'll finish with input 3 first, That's okay, that means all of its stuff already got written out persistently in the right order, then we'll, finish with input 1, then we'll finish with input 2. When we're done with all the inputs, there's nothing more to deal with. So basically, all we need is one page per result of the previous phase. We take B minus 1 of these. Now, there might be more than B minus 1 things in the previous phase. That's okay, we'll just do it again. So we're taking B minus 1 results of the previous phase, and we're producing a result that is the sorted result of basically merging together the sorted results of this phase. In all of input 1, all of the things from 1 were sorted. All the things in input 2 were sorted. We're going to produce something that is a sorted thing of not just the individual first pages, but of all the pages from the previous run. So, for example, if we had things that were, 4 pages, then we'll be merging together however many things, B minus 1 things, that were 4 pages, producing something that now is going to be 4 times B minus 1 sorted. Get the idea? So each time we're just merging together however many runs, B minus 1 runs from the previous stage, which might not be all the runs. So each time we're going to be doing the same trick that we did before. What is going to go on? The number of passes is not going to be log to the base 2 anymore. It's going to be divide and conquer, where each time we're merging together B minus 1 things. We'll divide by B minus 1, and then we'll divide by B minus 1, and then we'll divide by B minus 1. We'll keep dividing by B minus 1 because we're merging together B minus 1 things. Take a look again over here. We got N over B runs at phase 0, and each time we're merging together B minus 1 results. If you keep dividing by B minus 1 each time, how many times do you have to keep doing it? Log to the base B minus 1 of N divided by B. And of course, ceiling of N divided by B, and also ceiling of the log. Why is that 1 there? Phase 0 again. So phase 0 plus, how many phases do you need if you're dividing by B minus 1 each time? Log to the base B minus 1 of the results you got out of phase 0, which were N over B things that you're merging together. And of course, again, every page has to get read or written once. So there are N pages, it's going to be 2N, N for the reads, N for the writes, times the number of passes. The number of passes is what you see on the top line. So that's the amount of work you have to do. Let's see how this works as an example, where let's say B equals 5, and the N is going to be 108. So what happens on this? What do you do in pass 0? Well, you've got B buffers, and you're going to sort with B buffers. So we take 108, we divide by 5, and we take the ceiling of that. And that's going to end up giving us 108 divided by 5. That's a little more than 21, but less than 22. So that's going to give us 22 sorted runs, each of which is 5 pages long. Notice that the last run only has 3 pages in it, because 21 times 5 is 105, so the last run is only going to be 3 pages, but 22 runs of 5 pages, or a little bit less for the last one. Might be 5 pages, might be a little bit less. What do? We have 22 sorted runs, and we're going to be having 4 runs for the previous stage that end up getting merged together. So in pass 1, we're going to have B minus 1 input pages and 1 output page. And so we're going to divide 22 not by 5, but by 4, because we're using 1 page for the output. Ceiling of 22 divided by 4 is going to be 6, so we produce 6 pages, and of course now they're 4 times as big. They're going to be size 20, but there were only 108 pages, so it's going to be 5 runs that are 20, and the last run is only going to be 8 pages. It's only going to add up to 108. You really don't have to read in the non-existent empty pages. So it's always going to be 108 read and 108 written. So 5 runs of size 20 and 1 run of size 8. Now we're going to do it again. We're going to take the runs. We have 6 sorted runs, and we're going to see what we can do about merging 4 of them together at a time. What's 6 divided by 4? 2 when we take the ceiling. So we'll have 1 run that has a result of four, two sorted runs. We're gonna have one run that's gonna be, of size 80. We'll merge together 4 of the 20-page runs. And that's gonna give us something that has size 80. And then for the last stuff, we'll only be dealing with the remaining 28 pages. So we'll be dealing with that, and we'll produce a run of size 28. We'll be merging together a run of size 20 and a run of size 8 to get a run of size 28. And then finally, we get one sorted file that has 108 pages in it, and that ends up giving us the result. So that's how the thing ends up working. So how is this gonna work in practice? Well, I'll give you numbers, but I'll tell you that the calculation I'm gonna give you has gotten better. If, look at the numbers here, and basically the result in terms of, this is the number of passes. The number of passes depending on what the value of B is. So, for example, if you only have 100 pages, then with B equals 3, you're gonna need 7 passes. But if, B is bigger, you obviously need fewer passes. Log to the base B minus 1 is something. That's a really interesting sound. Somebody doesn't like logs. Okay, and you see, it's not that big a deal. But if we go up to something where we have 100 million, and we operate with B equals 3, that's gonna take, 26 passes, et cetera. The number of passes grows. With, a billion records, and again, the number of things that people wanna work with is kind of big these days. With B equals 3, it takes 30 passes. B equals 17, 8, B equals 257. It's only 4, which sounds pretty good. So if you were operating, let's say, with a 30K page size, then this would mean that you've got a 32 terabyte relation. And yeah, people sometimes try to sort things that are really that big. If you're operating with B equals 257, if it took, which it doesn't, it's a lot smaller than that. If it took 1 millisecond to do a read, that would end up taking, over 1,000 hours, not quite 50 days, 46 days, if you assume that. Now, it gets cut down. Maybe it's not a millisecond, maybe it's only a microsecond, or maybe a small number of nanoseconds if you're doing, the right kind of prefetch. But that's still, that's still, fairly big to think about what the number is inside some of these algorithms. But things have gotten better. Certainly, it's not going to take 46 days for that size data. There are much better algorithms that are out there. So, we're going to talk about how you end up doing an internal sort. Here's something, a version of a replacement sort that allows you to do things with effectively it's an in-place algorithm to be able to produce the result. Suppose that you're operating with B equals 2 and there are only 2 tuples per page. And you're seeing how inputs would end up working. And the input happens to be this funny sequence. We could do it with any other sequence we liked. So to begin with, what we would do is we would have 2 pages with 2 tuples per page. We begin with having the 1020 and the 3040 inside memory. And what we do is we go ahead and we try to read the 25, but there's no room for it. So we'll output the first value, which is the 10. Now in memory, we have 20, 25, 30, 40. So what we're doing is we're going to put the 25 in place in memory. So that's the way that it operates. Now we read the 35, and we'll output the smallest value because there's no room for the 35. So now we have 25, 30, 35, 40, as we go on. And same kind of thing going on. We read the 9, so we output the first value, which is 25, that looks good. Now we have the 9, 30, 35, 40. We read the 8, we output the 30, and we've got 8, 9, 35, 40. But notice how many outputs we have. Now we have the 10, 20, 25, and 30. Our output buffer is full. So basically, what are we going to do? We try to read the 7, we try to output the 35, but the trouble is we will write out the output buffer when it ends up becoming full, but we'll keep producing outputs in a new buffer. So every time we read something in, we'll write out the smallest value that we had so far, basically, let's see, what we're going to do is we now end up reading the value 5, and let's see, we've gotten the 10, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40. We have now not run out of space inside our output, but basically we can no longer output a bigger value. We could output the 10, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40 because the values were always increasing, and we produced a run that corresponded to that. What happens is now we go ahead and we see what we can do about outputting a value. We always want to output a value that is bigger than what we saw before. So again, we output the 10 at the beginning, we output the 20, we output the 25, but notice that we output that at this step, and I should emphasize this, we don't output the 8 even though it's the smallest value. We're going to output the next value because we want to make the runs as big as possible. So what we're going to do is we'll output the 30, and we can keep on doing this and creating a run as long as the values keep getting bigger. But at this point, we're going to have to start a new run in memory to be able to do this. On disk, we have the 10, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40. In memory, we have the 6, 7, 8, 9, and we keep going through with this process once again, creating additional sorted runs. And with this particular algorithm, the average length of a run for this particular sort is going to be 2 times B. There can be worse cases in which it's worse than that, but on average it's going to be 2 times B. And this is, an algorithm that can frequently be used, but in fact, quicksort is a more likely algorithm to be used in practice. And let me give you a fact of life. I can't fully justify it, it's just true. That there can be algorithms that have worst case behavior. As most of you know, quicksort is something that in the worst case can be an n-squared algorithm. It tends to get used anyway because it isn't in the worst case very often. It's a simpler algorithm, better memory management than some of the other algorithms. It just tends to be used in practice for sorting a lot more than a lot of the other algorithms, even the algorithms like heap sort and merge sort that are n log n algorithms. So I'll give you a simple fact about consistency. I'm a great believer in keeping everything completely consistent and having things where you know that the worst case is no worse than things like n log n in the case of sorting algorithms. And I'm wrong. When I talk about consistency later in the course, I'll try to explain what's going on there. But I will tell you right now, I can't fully do it. Things that end up giving good results in practice in terms of performance and resource utilization end up being used a lot more than things where you can say, in the worst case, this is better. And I can't justify it completely other than it's true. So there have been proofs that the bumblebee can't fly, but try telling that to the bumblebee. And it's not going to fall down and say, you're right, I haven't been able to fly all along. It still flies. And so this, just happens to be true. So having longer runs means fewer passes. So there are algorithms that end up resulting in fewer passes. So far, what we've done is something really stupid, which we're going to get better at. I told you the original algorithm had lots of things wrong with it. You know what happens?